Hi there, good morning. Welcome to this live broadcast right here on Moneycontrol. You're watching Newspresso with me, Stacy Pereira. And like the drill goes, we're going to be getting you the top headlines from across the globe, all that's doing a buzz within India, from the corporate world as well as from politics. We have all of that covered for you, as well as the latest buzzing trends. So don't go anywhere. Stay right here because we'll be back with all that lined up in this next half hour for you. So let's get straight to what we're getting from our global handover first. While seems like it's quite a weak handover that is coming in from Wall Street, as investors are digesting those details of that July Fed meet that took place, and where the Fed decided to, it has hinted that there could be potentially higher rate cuts going ahead. Now, the Dow Jones was down by 0.5 percentage point in trade, whereas S&P 500 dipping by 0.76%, and the Nasdaq also declining by 1.15% in trade. Now, it was a second consecutive losing session for the three major indices. But if you look at what the Fed has done, the central bank in July's meeting has cited the lingering inflation woes, saying that additional tightening may be necessary to bring down inflation. Now, the federal funds rate is currently in the range between 5.25% to 5.5%, the highest level in more than 22 years. Now, this is what has kept Fed quite busy, in fact, and having to take those decisions then because of that. Well, let's also look at how the European markets are doing. And well, we did see European markets close just marginally lower yesterday, and that's after investors are digesting that UK inflation data as well that was come out. The Pan-European Stock 600 index ended the session by 0.1% lower, with major sectors and major brokers pointing in opposite directions. Now, media stocks were the ones that led the losses, down by about 0.9%, while it was retail stocks which rose about 0.9%. On the macro front, like I was speaking, UK inflation rate, that one has slid to 7.9% in June, below expectation. Now, CPI data is showing that this has come in much lower than what was expected, but we are also seeing a core inflation. Now, this though has been quite sticky, and that one still coming. Now, remember, this number is nowhere close to that target range of 2% by the Bank of England. And core inflation, like I was talking about, which excludes volatile energy and food, alcohol as well as tobacco prices, that one is remaining sticky and come at an annualized rate of 6.9%, but has fallen from that 31-year high of 7.1% that it saw in May. Now, the Bank of England, remember, has implemented a bumper 50 basis point hike to the interest rates in the last month, this being their 13th consecutive increase in order to rein in inflation. And let's look at Asia, where it is a sea of red, one could say, in the Asian Pacific region. All major indices have opened this Thursday morning in the negative territory. The Hong Kong's Hang Seng is the one that is leading the losses, tumbled by about 2% on opening. Now, in mainland China too, the CSI 300 has inched down by 0.47%. Australia's ASX 200, that one too is down by about 0.9%. This ahead of its unemployment numbers that are to be announced for the month of July. Japan's Nikkei 225 as well as the Topix, both are trading lower by about 1%. So is South Korea's Kospi, down and about in trade. So clearly a sea of red for Asian markets there. And on the commodities front, well, crude oil prices have also slipped further despite that large drawdown in U.S. crude stockpiles, as investors are now worried about the China's embattled economy against the expectations of a tighter supply in the United States. Now, Brent crude futures we saw fell by about $1.23 or coming to around $83.66 per barrel currently. Now, both benchmarks have fallen more than 1% in that previous session, that being their lowest since August 8th. Now, July activity figures have prompted concerns that China may struggle to meet that growth target of about 5% for the year without more fiscal stimulus, and that calls for authorities to take decisive steps going ahead. On the other hand, you do have data from the Energy Information Administration which shows that U.S. crude oil inventories fell by nearly 6 million barrels last week despite that high production. Now, bringing you the latest from the climate updates that we are seeing, and wildfires have clearly swept through Canada this time around, especially in their northwest territories, which have declared a state of emergency. Now, the blazes have forced people to evacuate their homes and also destroyed remote communities in Canada's territorial capital of Yellowknife. Now, authorities have approved federal assistance to combat these wildfires, while you also at the same time have the worst wildfire in history for the United States, which has been raging through Hawaii, and the death toll there now has reached 106. Now, the full-scale destruction due to these fires in Maui has not been determined yet, though management agencies have estimated it to cost by about $5.52 billion for all of the losses that have been incurred. And a quick recap of what went down in trade yesterday. Well, we did see the market stage quite a smart recovery in that later half of trade, and that's what we've been seeing pretty much this whole week, where the market gains momentum at the end. Nifty reclaiming that 19,450 level, Sensex too gaining about 138 odd points to close above that 65,500 levels. Now, it was the IT stocks that really lifted market sentiment, but the financial ones that remain the drag. Metal stocks also coming under quite a bit of pressure after seeing that raising dollar index that we've been looking at. Now, Tata Steel was among the top losers because you saw that metal pack quite hammered. Now, market breadth though was quite neutral, with the advance and decline ratio at 1:1. But among the stocks that you need to be keeping out in your radar, we will see Adani after that block deal. We also saw Indigo after that major block deal. Couple of block deals that are taking place in the secondary market that are going to keep things quite tight. But let's talk about Adani, like I was mentioning, and that stock will be in focus. That's because investment firm GQG Partners Emerging Market Fund, as well as Goldman Sachs and GQG Partners International, as well as few of other investors, have picked up about 8.1% stake in Adani Power through two large block deals that took place in trade yesterday. GQG Partners and others have said that they have bought 31 crore worth of shares of Adani Power in the largest ever secondary market equity deal. And it is likely that promoter group Adani family was one of the ones to sell that stake for about 9,000 crore rupees, or roughly $1.1 billion. Now, after the Hindenburg report, though, in March, it was GQG Partners that went against the market sentiment and also invested in Adani stocks, investing more than 15,000 crores in 4 different Adani Group companies so far. And amidst reports of that block deal, Adani Power shares yesterday were trading lower by about 2%. So we'll have to see how it reacts and how the street really reacts to it starting this morning. Now, moving on then from market updates to some of the key developments from the government. And here we have some quick highlights of what decisions were taken by the cabinet yesterday. Well, they had approved about 7 projects related to the railways that have got the nod now in yesterday's meeting. All of these projects will be completed at a cost of about 20,000 crore rupees. Now, this plan is quite aligned with the Amrit Bharat Station scheme. The Union Cabinet has also approved the extension of Digital India program, which they've put in quite a big budget for the same as well as a couple of other government schemes that are going to that have got the approval by the government just now. So that meeting quite crucial. Yesterday we saw a slew of outlays that were put in place by the government. Well, let's also tell you something very interesting now. We all know how the Supreme Court is trying in every sense to keep up with the times. And even though many of our laws are still quite draconian, this time around the top court has launched a handbook that contains a glossary of gender unjust terms as well as alternatives that can be used instead. Now, the handbook is called Combating Gender Stereotypes and has over 100 terms that were used in the judiciary system before but have now been replaced to do away with stereotypes attached to it. Let me just give you a few examples. Housewife, the term housewife will now be called a homemaker, whereas eve teasing will be referred to as street sexual harassment. Words like prostitute, whore or slut will simply be replaced by a woman, or a prostitute will be replaced by a sex worker. So all of those changes are being put into place simply to remove those which were actually referred to as stereotypical words. Now, the launch of this handbook marks quite a significant milestone, one would say, in the journey towards becoming a more just and equitable society, almost paving the way for a more inclusive, impartial and gender-like legal system that is just to all. Now, we are glad that this 30-page handbook is come out sooner, but do let us know what you think in the comment section about these latest developments by the Supreme Court and whether it was just in time that we needed something like this. Let's also tell you what Chandrayaan 3 is up to. And yes, of course, India is a step closer now to that touchdown on the moon. ISRO, in fact, yesterday said in an update that Chandrayaan 3 has completed that last moon-bound maneuver ahead of that separation. Now, do note that this means that the final lunar-bound maneuver is completed and the lander is all set to separate from the propulsion module, I beg your pardon. And ISRO said that they went on to describe that today's successful firing needed for a short duration has put Chandrayaan 3 in an orbit of about 153 kilometers by 163 kilometers as intended. With this, the lunar-bound maneuvers are completed. Now remember, August 17, that is today, the lander module will be separated from the propulsion module, while the spacecraft is scheduled to land on the surface of the moon on 23rd of August. Remember, the mission of Chandrayaan 3 is to achieve a soft landing on the south pole of the moon. And let's get you all the sporting action then. Well, England have made history once again, we can say, and reaching this time around, reaching the first Women's World Cup final after beating host Australia 3-1. Now, the Lionesses, as they are called, will now take on Spain on Sunday in the finals. Now, it was England who actually drew the first blood as Ella Toone scored that 36-minute goal, but the Australian captain Sam Kerr fought back with a 63rd minute equalizer, hammering at sensational effort home around from the 25th yard line. But England didn't take that 1-1 draw to last for too long, and Lauren Hem shooting that 71st minute, and then Alicia Russo, who sealed the deal at the 86th minute, securing the spot in the finals. Now, co-host Australia, who were backed by that magnificent home crowd in Sydney during that game, are the ones no longer in the tournament, but they can definitely secure a third-place finish when they face Sweden in a playoff on Saturday. So that was quite an interesting match there that we saw, but a lot to look forward to over the weekend. The Women's FIFA World Cup finals, they're going to conclude. But let's tell you all that you need to be looking out for today. Well, we do have the G20 Health Ministers meeting, which will be held in Gandhinagar from the 17th to the 19th. We are being told that Prime Minister Modi will be addressing that inaugural session that will take place on August 18th. There will also be an interesting joint health and finance ministry ministers meeting that will take place in Gandhinagar as well, which will see the finance ministers join virtually, whereas all the health ministers who are present in Gandhinagar will be taking stage. There's also, interestingly, we have Alka Lamba in the world of politics. Well, we do have Alka Lamba, whose statement saying that Congress has chosen to contest on all 7 parliamentary seats in Delhi. That has led to some bit of tension now between AAP as well as the Grand Old Party, and both the parties of the India Alliance now will be meeting today. This meeting is scheduled to understand whether this alliance will go ahead with AAP members or whether they choose to separate. So that will be very interesting to watch out for in the political front. And that's all the time we have on this edition of Newspresso. Hope it was useful and informative and gave you that kickstart to your day. But don't forget to come back same place, same time for your fresh shot of Newspresso tomorrow, because I'll be right here. Till then, from all of us that put this show together, thanks so much for tuning in.